Hello and welcome to TidyX episode 130. TidyX is a screencast where we go through and explain how our code works. My name's Ellis Hughes.
And my name's Patrick Ward. Thanks for listening to TidyX. And please remember to like and subscribe on the YouTube channel if you enjoy the work that we're doing. Also, if you enjoy the work that we're doing because we enjoy it and you feel like it's impacted your success, we do have a Patreon page and we're always grateful for anything that anyone could contribute. And with that, we're going to jump into episode 130, where
Let's
we're
do
doing a
it.
little bit of, we're going to do a little bit of Markdown with Plotly. And I'm going to tee up the problem space for us before we get going here. We had a question from a longtime viewer of the show. And he said, I'm in a situation where I can't spin up a shiny web app. Like I can't spin up on a server where I work. They don't want us to have web apps that could potentially get out into the
Yeah.
public and
And
things like
that's
that. There's no
that's
server
totally
space.
reasonable. It could also be a situation where you just don't have the IT support to do it. Like
Totally.
you,
Yeah.
you don't have servers, you don't. So like this is like not an uncommon situation for a lot of people
Yeah.
to find themselves in. Like I want to provide value and interactivity to my key stakeholders, but I
That's
can't
right.
spin up a shiny app.
And
What
yeah,
are my
yeah,
options?
you don't have the you don't have server space, you don't have IT support, you don't have funding to get maybe like a posit shiny server type of RStudio Connect is what it used to be called type
Or
of
you can't
thing.
put it out there. Yeah.
Yeah. So and so that's fine. So what are the options? The immediate option that I came up with was let's use Markdown and Plotly, and we can build interactivity within in an HTML based report without having to have a server. You're not going to have all the bells and whistles that you would have it with Shiny. It's not going to be able to read the database and pull back data and things like that. But if you had to just spin up like your weekly or daily report in something that's interactive, this is an awesome way to do it. So we've created a Markdown file here. We've gone through Markdown a bunch, so we're not going to spend a ton of time on the top part here, the first 15 lines. You can see the YAML, which is rows 1 to 13. And that's basically just telling R, hey, when we knit this thing, I want it to be the scaffolding to look like this.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see that we've got a table of contents that's going to float as the person kind of scrolls through. It's going to float in the left hand column there. We've got a little bit of theming type of stuff. We don't want number selections because we're really just dealing with plots. We don't have a lot of like verbiage or words
Mm-hmm.
text within this file. So that's the YAML. And then on line 15, I've kicked in this little report details with the first layer. That's what one hashtag means. That's kind of like the first layer, the first element within this markdown. I put in that little dot tab set within the brackets there, the braces there. And that's just telling R like, hey, we're going to have multiple tabs in this markdown report. So it's not just going to be one long page. It's going to be clickable between tabs. And so the data that we're going to use, I just spell it out right up front. We're going to be using the Llama baseball database. We're snagging all the players drafted 2010 or later who have played in at least 8 MLB seasons and with
So,
at least
so let's
100
think about
hits.
that for a second. Anyone that's played 8 years and was drafted after 2010.
Yeah,
So that
yeah,
means we're going to have people that were drafted in 2010, 11, 12, 13, and 14 because we're in the year 2022. And
yeah,
so if they've completed 8 seasons, that means they have to have started 8 seasons ago, which means 2014. So it's
yeah,
like lock that away for a second there. So let's get going. And so the first thing you typically do with your R Markdown is you want to have all the libraries you intend on using. It's best practice to throw them at the very top. So we have the setup chunk here, where you use this knitter op chunks $set to set the defaults for all the rest of your chunks. Where we're saying, hey, echoes false, so don't repeat our code, don't show the code. Warning is false, so I don't want to see any warnings in my report, and message is false. So hide any messages that get output by my code. So this is like a pretty default or standard way that you set your options at the beginning. We did a whole series on our Markdown and all the different options that you can set. So we're not going to go in depth on that. Then you're going to be loading in your libraries. We know that some of these libraries can be pretty talkative, so we're doing our best to kind of suppress that as well, because again, we don't want to see this in our report. So we've got to suppress warnings around suppress packages startup messages. So this should silence all the package messages that get spun up. So we're going to load the library crosstalk. We're going to load the library plotly, which is going to allow us to do these HTML widgets. We're going to load library tidyverse, which is going to give us all our fun data manipulation tools. And then finally the library lawman, which is the source of our data for this week.
Well, one thing with the suppress warnings and startup packages, I always do this in Markdown, and it's not because I don't want to see the messages. It's because I don't want my end users to see the messages. I did have someone send in a question about that because they were asking about some code and they had tidyverse loaded and dplyr loaded and ggplot loaded. And I was like, why are you loading all these? And they're like, well, I thought I need them all. And I'm like, but tidyverse has them all. And they're like, oh, well, I always see you guys suppress the warnings and package startups in your Markdown. So I didn't know what tidyverse loads. So if I'm just doing the code for myself, I never do that. I always want to see all that stuff. But if it's for someone else, I get rid of it. So just remember, some of these packages have things, and those the talkative piece up front is sort of important because it might tell you things that you need to know. So just remember, it's
yeah, if you're doing it for yourself, definitely don't
yeah.
suppress them. It's a lot easier to see that.
Totally.
So let's construct the data that we're going to be using for this week. This is just to provide an example for us something to work off of. So this is less important. Sometimes the data set that we're working with is actually pretty important. But this situation, we're just trying to get some data. And as we said, we're trying to get all the people that were drafted since 2010 that have played at least 8 seasons. So we're going to pull the batting data set from the Lawman data set. We're going to quickly just join in on people. So people contain some personnel information or personal information about them. Then we want to get the position they played. And so we're going to do this again with the left join, but the fielding data set from Lawman. And we're going to, before we merge it in, we're going to do a subset to select only columns player ID, year ID, and position. And so this means that it'll be joining on player ID and year ID to add in that position information. So this is like the value add of this line here is the POS. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to do some calculations. We want to figure out, okay, what year, because these data sets are big. It's like from early 1900s till now.
Even earlier.
Even earlier than that. So we want to start subsetting pretty early on to avoid doing a bunch of repetition here. So first, let's figure out when their first season was. So we know that the column debut is a date, and it's always going to start with the first the year that they played at the very beginning, and then month and then day, I think, is the structure of that. So we know that we can use the substring function. Go, hey, I want the first to the fourth entry of debut. And so that'll give us the year that they started in. And then we're also going to construct a name column because from the people data set, we have name last and name first. But that's not incredibly helpful to us. We actually want their full name. So we're going to paste them together and use a sep, comma. So it'll be their last name, comma, first name. We're going to then, as we said before, only players that were drafted after 2010. So we're going to filter on first season, that data set the column we just created, to keep everybody only if they've played or were drafted 2010 or more recently. Then we're going to calculate some statistics for us, such as on-base percentage. So how many hits? I forget what BB and
based on balls and hit by pitch, divided by at-bats, based on balls hit by pitch, and sacrifice flies.
Gotcha. And then we're going to calculate their batting average by hits divided by at-bats to give us how many times they hit on average. Then we're going to subset to get the information that we're going to use for today's episode here. So player ID, their name, what year what year is being represented in this data set, their position that they played that year, how many at-bats, their batting average and on-base percentage. We want to filter out any players that didn't have at least 100 at-bats because we're looking at batting average and on-base percentage. But if they've only been up 100 times, that's not necessarily, or less than 100 times, that's not as enough information for us in this situation. So we want to just filter to keep anybody that's been up to bat at least 100 times. We're then going to group by player ID and create this experience data set. So this will put in a 1 through n years that they played. assuming that every row represents a single year. Then we're going to arrange by player ID, and then we're going to do a group by again. But this time, as we said before, we wanted to keep all players that played at least 8 years. And so we thought the way to do this would be to, okay, what is the maximum year ID? So what is the maximum years that they played? Subtract their rookie season. So in theory, that's the minimum year ID, right? Because if their rookie season should be the first year they played, which should be the smallest year. And let's subtract the two. And if that is greater than or equal to 7, that should give us 8 years of playtime, because rookie year would be 0. And so let's run all that. That was a lot of talking about code. Now you see it run, and now you can see, like, we've got Jose Abreu, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. And you can see that Abreu changed positions in 2021.
So there's a second data engineering piece that if we were, for the purposes of making an interactive plot, it's not going to matter. If we were trying to make this as accurate as possible, we'd probably need to do some sort of paste and then, kind of paste group by, so that we represent, positions as 1B, 3B in the 2021 season, yeah.
But ultimately, this is, again, not the purpose of our data set, or of the episode. So now that we've gone to this, let's create our first plots. Patrick, do you want to take us through these?
Yeah, so on line 62, I give it a pound player production. That's going to be tab 1, because remember, we set up the tab set in our initial hashtag, which says, hey, we're going to have tabs, so everything that's pound is going to create a new tab. So pound, I've got player production tab. Pound, first plot is called rookie season production, and you're going to be able to select the rookie season of interest, place your cursor over the dot to see which player it is. So I always, whenever I make these kinds of plots, I like to give a little bullet point to tell the user explicitly, hey, this is how you use it. Okay, so let's jump. Yeah, here's how it works. So here's what we're going to do to jump in. First thing we need to do is we need to set up some highlighting capabilities. So we loaded the crosstalk package so we could use some of this functionality within Plotly. So the highlighting key is going to basically tell us which selector the person is allowed to kind of click on. And so they're going to be selecting the rookie season and get those players returned back. So the highlight key says X equals DAT. So we're going to take the data frame that we built. We're going to filter for the first year of experience. So that's going to be either 2010, 11, 12, 13, or 14 within our data set. And we're just going to use that year ID as the selector that the person can click on and get information returned. So we run that. And now we build our plot. So we use this BS calls, which is bootstrap calls. So that's going to basically bootstrap these two plots together, so they're like interactive. You could change the figure size or open it on a different browser size, and it's going to always expand and compress to the page.
Yep.
So the width has to be 12. That's pretty similar, standard fare, just like in Shiny. So we're going to say, hey, that highlight key, we only need it to be 2 of the page, 2/12 of the page, I guess, and then 10/12 of the page is going to be our actual plot. So we build the plot like this. We have our filter information. We use that shared data is the rookie key. That's the little highlight key that we built up above. We're grouping by the year ID, and we give it some nice little labels there. So the ID is going to be the year ID. The label is going to be the actual seasons. You'll see what this looks like in a second. And then we throw in our Plotly plot. So the data is coming from that rookie highlight key. So we want to, again, be able to have that crosstalk between it. So when they click a button, it does something on the plot. The x-axis is going to be batting average. We have to use the little tilde here in Plotly. The y-axis is going to be the on-base percentage. So we're basically having an XY plot of the two performance production measures. Show legend equals false, because we don't need to see all the players. We'll have hundreds of players and it just gets messy. And then we're going to add in the points. So in Plotly, those points are called markers. We're going to say add markers. The text is, this is our tooltip. And so if we don't add text, all we're going to get returned when the person hovers over is the batting average and the on base percentage, the X, Y. I want them to know the name of the person. So I'm going to say, hey, within that tooltip, make sure we grab the name as well. So we do tilde name. That comes right from the data set. And then the marker that we're going to use, we put this in a list. And this is because Plotly is running JavaScript underneath. So whoever wrote Plotly geniusly said, hey, it's going to be a lot easier to turn this into JavaScript if we dump some of this stuff into a list. So that's why we do it. So we got our list. Yeah, our marker is going to be colored in this blue color. You can see that Ellis has updated to the newest RStudio, which shows you the actual hex colors inside of your
It's real nice.
editor. Yeah, really nice. The size is 15, so we want it to be a little bigger size. And now we just give it some nice, pretty X and Y axes, as well as a title. So those are all fit within this layout function. And again, those are lists. And we run this, and we run the rookie plot. And now we've got this sweet little, rookie season plot.
Oh, yep,
Yeah.
there we go.
Oh, so you've clicked on players. You can click on the tooltip on the side and get, let's say, like anybody drafted in 2012 or 2010 or whatever it is. You can highlight, you can zoom in. So as it starts to get busy, maybe you want to look at a cluster of players. Yeah.
Here, let's pull them all in.
Pull them
So
all.
who's at the very top here?
Yeah.
So like
So
Jose Iglesias, Jose Abreu, Salvador
yeah.
Perez.
And then you can double click to get back out to the original plot. And that's plot one of our Markdown file.
Sweet. All right. Now we've got one way to quickly visualize, okay, what is the spread of all our players in their rookie season? But that isn't all we want to look at. Let's look at some more information, such as the time, or is it time series next? Time series.
Yeah, time series is next. Yeah.
So this is going to be the next tab.
It's the next plot on tab one because it's three hashes.
Yeah. Sorry, 3 hashes.
Yep.
And so again, we're giving them some information like, hey, let's look at the trend of these players. You can click on the player, so it'll show a bunch of lines, but again, it's interactive. So you're going to be able to click on them, and that'll highlight that player across their entire career, well, across the 8 years or so that we're looking at. And then it'll gray out everyone else. And so it'll make it really easy for whoever's interacting with this sort of plot to be able to understand what's going on. How did they trend against all the rest of the players that are there? And so the way we do this is we first start off with a highlight key. So we're like, hey, we're going to be highlighting by something. And so you say highlight key, we're going to throw in our data set, and we're going to go, hey, we're actually going to be highlighting my name. So when we click on it, that is what you want to look across to highlight, is just on the name of the player. So we're going to make that player key. We're next going to construct our Plotly again. So there's a bit of a theme here. We're using a lot of Plotly because it makes these nice these HTML JavaScript widgets that are able to run offline, just on your browser without connecting to the internet. So we pass data with our player key information here. We're going to set the default color of our lines to be black. So when nothing is clicked, they'll show up as a bunch of black lines. And then we're going to set the line width to be 5, just to kind of make it a little bit easier to see them. The default can be a little bit thin. Next, we're going to do a group by. So this is telling Plotly when it constructs the lines, do it by name. And then we're going to add these lines. And so we're going to set our X line to be year ID. So that way we have 2010, 11, all the way out to current year. And then we have our y-axis being batting average, because we want to look at the performance of our various players' batting average. We're going to set our layout, again, using lists. We're going to set the title of the y-axis to be batting average, the x-axis to be season, the title to be career batting average trend. And we set auto sizing to be false because we don't want it to be auto changing things. We've been having some difficulties with Plotly actually showing up real nice in our viewer here. But whatever, that's not a big deal. Now we're going to throw it into the highlight function, because this will make sure that it has the highlighting capability. Select I is true, dynamic is true, and persistent is true, so that way it maintains and sticks around. And there we go. So now we've got here, let me actually click on zoom so that it shows up in theory a little bit nicer here. And it is still cutting off the year at the very bottom there, so that's a little obnoxious. But
Mm-hmm.
it is what it is. But this will allow,
Once you knit it, it'll
yeah.
once we knit it, it'll yeah.
As you can see here, it's kind of like a mess here. But what you can do is, hey, like who's actually this player that's kind of sitting down at the very bottom here? So you can click on that trace, and
Yeah.
now you see immediately all the other lines grayed out. The
And
one we
then
cared about turned red.
and then you can go up and select a new color and let's say compare this guy to Jose Abreu. So then go into the text box and start. There he is, Jose Abreu, first guy. Click on him, and now we have a yeah, there we go. Now we have both of their careers and everybody else is grayed out, but we can compare two players and we kind of can highlight over it and get their names and their performance, their
Preview
batting
that,
average.
and you can
It's kind of
select
cool.
4 different colors here. So then if we wanted to pick another player, just scrolling around,
Mike
let's
Trout,
grab
pretty
Mike
good
Trout.
one. Yeah.
Everyone knows who Mike Trout is, right?
Yeah.
Oh no, they're all purple.
Oh no.
Da, da, da. Ah, stop it. Let's just bring up Mikey Boy again. There you go. And there's Mike Trout's career from 2011
Yeah. All the
until
way
the present
through.
year. There you go.
Yeah.
333.
Kind of cool. Awesome.
There you go. So that's the first or the second plot. Patrick, do you want to take us through the
Yeah.
last plot that
All
we've
right.
got going on
Yep.
here?
So yeah, so now we're using two hashtags. So remember, t- first hashtag is the title. Two is going to be a new tab. So far, everything we've done has been player centric. This last second tab, I figured why not do something that's allowing the end user to evaluate the population as a whole. So this one, we're selecting position of interest, and we're going to see the on base percentage and batting average as histograms, and it's going to change colors based on position to allow you for comparison, which is the purpose here. So again, just like Ellis said, you can kind of see the theme. We set up our highlight key, which is now saying, hey, we want to filter on position for the user interface. I'm going to create a batting average histogram. So now it's going to be Plotly. The data comes from that highlight key that we just built. We're going to make this one in gray. So the underlying population as a whole plot is always going to be gray. Then we're going to group by position and add a histogram of the batting average. So that's how you add a histogram in Plotly. And then the layout, we just give it an x-axis title, and then we auto size false because, again, of that issue that we were having. So, oh, you got to run position key.
Bad.
And now we're going to do the exact same thing for on base percentage. Everything's the same here except for the fact that I changed the add histogram x-axis to OBP. So we run that, and now we're going to use subplot. So if you're familiar with ggplot, we use facetting. In Plotly, it's called subplot. So what we're doing here is we're saying, hey, we want the BA histogram and we want the on-base percentage histogram. We only want a one row. We can go ahead and let them share a y-axis because they're both rate stats between 0 and 1. And we can go ahead and let them share a title axis so that we can give a total title across the top. So they're going to share a title. The layout is bar mode. We're going to show legend equals false because we don't really care about the legend here. The highlight, again, just like before, dynamic is true, select eyes is true, and persistent is true so that they all stick. And then the selected attributes. So whenever they select a position group, we want a little bit of opaqueness so that the colors aren't so overwhelming and we can see comparisons between distributions. So if we go ahead and rerun this whole thing.
Let me drag that out.
Oh, there we go. And
Let me actually
so
see
now,
if. Okay, that didn't help. I was hoping if I zoomed out in my Art Studio, it would help there. Let's.
so oh,
It's still not working there. Whatever.
okay, so if we were to select a position group so we can see the whole population, if we select a position group, now we see that the gray gets kind of bleeded out, and then we select maybe like outfield or something, change it to green. So now we can see where these individual subpopulations fit within the overall or the underlying population. So we can see the batting average there on the left, you can see that first baseman peak a little bit below the total population, while outfielders are a little bit higher or right around similar to the total population, which with a much larger right tail. So they're distributed a little bit further. Maybe they're the ones that are getting more hits or getting on base more or something like that. So that's a way that you can give the end user the ability to kind of plink around and look at population stats. And if we knit the whole thing, we'll get our final report that. So it's going to crank here for a second, and you'll see that we have a floating table of contents. That's cool. There we go. It collapses. We've got our two plots right there. You can see that we don't have the issues with the x-axis now because the HTML widgets are held solid. Yep, and all the functionality works. And we also have a second tab up at the top, so we can go to the distributions. Again, the x-axes are all there. X-axes are all there. We can select our position groups. That's kind of fun. Yeah.
So we can do all these fun selectors here and see. You could probably take some of the information here and go, okay, well, I've got this person over here. They're hitting 0.33, whatever. Like, how do they compare? Like, what
Where
position?
does it fall? Yeah.
So you kind of make a decision to construct your roster, or however you want to use this data. But really, the important piece is the fact that this is all done locally. None of this. Now that this is run, I can just email this. So this is just now a file, right? That lives inside of. It's just this HTML file, and everything is contained within this HTML file. So I can package this up, ship it off to Patrick, and go, "Hey, Patrick, here is my assessment of these things. Here's what I'm pulling out of this. You can go ahead and play around with the data and see if you come up with anything." Want to quickly say some of the downsides might be this is just an HTML document, so literally anyone could open it. So you might want to, if you really want to be secure about it, encrypt the file before you zip it up, and password protect it, and send it. Do whatever you got to do with that. And if you have too much data, like if the data are really large, at the end of the day, you want to do pre-processing because all the data is living inside of this HTML as JavaScript data constructs. So you need to make sure to filter down the data as much as you can to make sure that you're only sharing the necessary information for the plots to work. Otherwise, it's going to have a bunch of information. And by that, I mean, I'm not saying at this point you need to filter it down. Yeah, it'll just slow down your computer. I'm not saying like at this point it needs to all be filtered down because that's not what's going to be shared. But as soon as you start adding this information, try to filter down as much as possible.
That's right.
Because otherwise it will start to slow down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so with that is how you make these fun interactive reports that are able to just be emailed around and shared, and you don't got to worry about having the IT infrastructure or set up spin up a Shiny app or whatever. If you just want quick updates to be able to share out, this is the way you got to do it. And with that is episode 130. Thank you all so much for joining. As always, my name's Ellis Hughes. You can find me on Twitter at Ellis_Hughes.
And my name's Patrick Ward. You can find me on Twitter at OSPPatrick. At Tidy_explained is where we both are on Twitter. Tidy.explained@gmail.com is where you can email us. But the most likely way to get in touch with us and the most convenient way for us is to like and subscribe on the YouTube channel. Drop your comment down below. And as always, if you feel like our work has in some way positively impacted your career, we do have a Patreon page, and we're always appreciative of anything that you would like to donate because we do enjoy doing the show for you all.
Yeah. Thank you all so much. Keep on exploring your world.